people have mysteriously vanished in America's wilderness. Join us as we dive into the deep end of the unexplainable and try to piece together what happened. You are listening to Locations Unknown.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Locations Unknown. I'm your co-host, Joey Rado, and with me, as always, is a man who scissor-kicked Chuck Norris and lived to tell the tale, Mike Van de Bogart.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you once again to all of our loyal listeners for tuning in. This is a big day for the podcast. We moved into our studio space yesterday, and we're recording our first episode here.
Yep, we're here, we're in it. It sounds a little echoey to me, so the audio might be a little off. We're
still fine-tuning. It's not built out yet. We're kind of slumming it at the moment.
Yeah.
So
we're doing video. We're not sure if that's going to work either. The angles are all wrong. So this is going to be our test podcast while we build the space out.
Yeah, so we apologize for any of the audio issues, or if you hear a car go by with a loud muffler. We're right on the corner of a major street here in downtown Milwaukee now. Before we get going, just want to give some shout outs to new Patreon supporters. So we got Ryland Jenin, Colleen Elliott, Lelia Parker, and Karina Bracken. So thank you so much for supporting the show. This is the direct result of support from all of our amazing Patreon members and YouTube members. And your future support, you're going to see the direct result of that as we build out this studio and make it better and better. And
yep, we're going to be building computers that can handle the video better, lighting, sound adjustments, things like that. It's going to look awesome.
Yeah, so thank you so much for supporting the show. Real quick, if you want to call the show and leave a voicemail, you can call 208-391-6913. You can talk about anything you want, like us, hate us, suggestions.
Ooh, do we have any interior dessers that have design ideas?
Yes.
We'll send you pictures of the space. You could do a 3D rendering, what you do for your job professionally, maybe just offer up for free to help the show.
So, we're excited to be in the new space, but not a lot of updates other than that. So anything from your end?
Nope. All right, everybody, let's gear up and get out to explore Locations Unknown. July 21st, 1996. A National Park Service backcountry ranger with 28 years of experience sets off from his remote outpost on a multi-day hike in the Kings Canyon National Park wilderness. When he fails to radio in, a massive search kicks off. 5 years later, a gruesome discovery is made. Join us this week as we investigate the disappearance of Randy Morgenson. Kings Canyon National Park is located in California, where all the great national parks are all located.
There's so many of them.
Yeah. So where this is going to take place within that park is around the Tyndale Creek Ranger Station and Bench Lake in that area. So if you're from there and familiar with those places, that's where it is. Just a quick note on the park. Both Kings Canyon National Park and Sequoia National Park are jointly managed, which is why you often hear the parks referred to as Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Park. The location in this case happens inside Kings Canyon National Park. That's the park we'll primarily focus on during the location profile. So the size, it is just shy of 500,000 acres at 461,907. So that makes it the 21st largest park in the National Park Service. It was established in California on March 4th in 1940.
One of the later parks, I mean, a lot of the parks we've covered have all been like 1900 late 1800s.
Yeah, it's one of the newer parks.
Yeah.
It's funny when you say newer park because it's just as old as all the other ones. It's just, we've just like, now you're a park.
Yeah, it's been there longer than that.
It's just a chunk of land we just decided to put invisible borders around.
Yeah.
That's funny. So habitation history of the area. The Sierra Nevada mountain range contains some of the oldest national parks in the nation. Again, they're all the same age, but the park, I know. I won't dwell on that. I just think it's funny. These parks occupy spectacular volcanic and glacial landforms, as well as distinctive subalpine and alpine habitats, setting these parklands apart from the wider landscapes of central and southern California. The location's uniqueness has made it especially important to Native Americans as well. Native peoples have used, tended, and occupied and valued the lands of the High Sierras in many ways, and still maintain deep connections to the parks today. People have inhabited what is now Kings Canyon National Park for about 6,000 or 7,000 years. The Owens Valley, how do you say the Paiute people?
I'll leave that one to you.
Paiute peoples, also known as Eastern Manos, visited the region from their homeland east of the Sierra Nevada around Mono Lake. The Paiute mainly used acorns found in lower elevations of the park for food, as well as deer and other small animals. They created trade routes connecting the Owens Valley with Central Valley west of the Sierra Nevadas. The Yokuts, who lived in the Central Valley, also ventured into the mountains during summer to collect plants, hunt game, and trade. Because of the inhospitable winter climate, they did not establish permanent villages in the high country. Prior to European contact, the Yakut population numbered between 15,000 and 20,000, and Manos about 6,000. So early Spanish exploration of California largely bypassed what is now Kings Canyon National Park in 1805. Gabriel Moraga led an expedition through the Central Valley and crossed what is now Kings River, bestowing the name Rio de los Santos Reyes, or River of the Holy Kings, on the stream. They were followed by prospectors during the California Gold Rush, which began in 1848. However, not much gold nor other minerals were discovered in the area. Hale Tharp, a disillusioned gold miner, is credited with the 1858 discovery of giant forest in Sequoia National Park, which led to the further exploration and discovery of the other sequoia forests in the area, including Grant Grove. So here are some interesting facts about Kings Canyon. Kings Canyon was originally General Grant National Park. In October of 1890, 1 week after the establishment of Sequoia National Park by Congress and President Benjamin Harrison, my second favorite president, a second, smaller national park was founded. General Grant National Park was created for the purpose of preserving the second tallest sequoia tree.
Just one tree.
Yep, which had been named for General Ulysses S. Grant. That's crazy. Those trees are so big. Have you ever seen them in person?
Yeah, when I was a kid.
I've never been there. My wife has been there with 4 of my kids over the course of a couple of years, and they all come back stunned, so I need to make it out there.
It's cool. I'd love to do a hiking trip out in this area.
It's just so far away.
I know.
The tree was named after General Ulysses S. Grant, the 18th President of the United States, and it was a unique feature of the park and attracted many visitors. The park was created to protect this tree from logging and other activities that could harm it. What are the other activities?
Just over tourism.
Yeah.
Too many people out there.
Grant's Grove. In order to protect General Grant and the surrounding trees in the area called Grant's Grove, the Department of the Interior sought to preserve 4 square miles of land just 6 miles northwest of Greater Sequoia National Park.
So that's Grant's Grove. It's like a special part of the park.
Awesome. So that no commercial activity or anything can happen to that area. It almost became Roosevelt National Park.
They had a lot of naming problems with this place.
Originally named General Grant National Park, the park which we know today as King Canyon almost became Roosevelt National Park. In the 1920s, construction began on the road to connect the two sites, making General Grant more accessible to visitors. At the same time, Congress and the Department of the Interior also began considering the idea of a larger park that would consume General Grant and Sequoia National Park and be called Roosevelt National Park.
Really focusing on the important things.
I know. It's important to protect them, but when you did that, okay, move on.
Yeah.
By mid-1920s, however, the plan for Roosevelt National Park failed when the House of Representatives voted against the initiative. I bet they spent way too much time on that.
Probably.
Before becoming Kings Canyon, the park featured America's first African-American superintendent.
This guy had a crazy life. I had no clue. I never heard of him before, but this is just a very brief
Like,
history.
should we do a show on him? It could be a really neat, like, we could do like a series, like interesting people in the parks.
Yeah, we definitely could do a show on this guy.
I mean, we just need content. So that's, but if he's that cool, I love learning about unique people. So he was born a slave during the American Civil War. Charles Young lived a truly extraordinary life. He was the first African-American to graduate from a white high school in Ohio. In 1884, Young defied the odds, winning an appointment to West Point through a competitive military examination. And after confronting the racism which was typical of his era, Young emerged as the only the third African-American to graduate from West Point's America's most prestigious military academy. That's tough, especially with everything against him.
That time, it would have been nearly impossible.
Yeah, we totally have to do a show on this guy.
Yeah.
Young served as a cavalry officer. He then became the captain of an all-black regiment at San Francisco's Presidio. Young rose through the military ranks to become one of the most respected leaders of his time. His career path would take an interesting turn, however, when managing the national parks became the responsibility of the U.S. Army beginning in 1891. Young was assigned to take his troops to Sequoia and General Grant, which is now Sequoia National Park and a small portion of Kings Canyon. It was during the summer of 1903 that Charles Young made history by becoming the acting superintendent of these two parks.
Pretty cool backstory of that guy, and it would be cool to like learn more about his.
Yeah, we totally we'll make a note. That'd be like, we could do even like, maybe that's a patron thing.
Yeah,
like do interesting people at the parks and do a patron series.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the climate. So our friends at the Köppen Climate Classification System, most of Kings Canyon National Park has a warm summer Mediterranean climate, with only the lowest of elevations having a hot summer Mediterranean climate. Because of the size of the adjacent national parks and their range of elevations, Sequoia and Kings Canyon, their weather will vary per your location and season of travel. Temperatures vary by elevation location, so be prepared with the right clothing, hiking, and camping equipment. Mineral King and Cedar Grove are actually closed in the winter. The Sierra foothills, which are about 1,000 to 4,000 feet, are characterized by mild, wet winters and hot, dry summers. So precipitation usually occurs from January to mid-May. Rain in the summer is actually very rare here. So your average rainfall is about 26 inches during the winter. Low-hanging clouds often drift in from the west, obscuring the countryside for several days at a time. In summer, Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Park's weather is in the middle elevations, 4,000, 7,000 feet, is characterized mainly by warm days and cool evenings with occasional afternoon thunderstorms. These elevations receive an average of 40 to 45 inches of precipitation annually. Much of this falls during the winter, resulting in a deep blanket of snow from December to May. Sub-zero temperatures, however, are rare. So it seems like a very pleasant park.
Yeah.
You're not going to run into too much stuff going on.
Not somewhere like Yosemite, where you can get really, or like...
It just had massive swings.
Massive swings, tons of snow.
Yeah. Some of the terrain... Kings Canyon National Park, located in the western slope of the Sierra Nevadas, to the east of San Joaquin Valley. I'm going to get butchered for that one.
San Joaquin.
Joaquin. Yeah.
Boy.
It's Joaquin Phoenix. So it's kind of like his name, Joaquin Valley. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know how to spell his name. Is divided into two distinct sections. The smaller and older western section centers around Grant Grove, home of many of the park sequoias, and has most of the visitors' facilities. And the larger eastern section, which accounts for the majority of the park's area, is almost entirely wilderness and contains the deep canyons of Middle and South Forks of Kings River. Kings Canyon is characterized by some of the steepest vertical relief in North America, with numerous peaks over 14,000 feet on the Sierra Crest along the park's east border, falling to 4,500 feet in the valley floor of Cedar Grove. Just 10 miles to the west, the Sierra Crest forms an eastern boundary of the park from Mount Goth in the north down to Junction Peak at the boundary of the Sequoia National Park. Several passes cross the crest into the park, including Bishop Pass, Taboose Pass, Sawmill Pass, and Kiersgaard Pass. All of the passes are above 11,000 feet in elevation. So just some of the animals, dangers that you might run into, or just some of the animals, not necessarily all dangerous. Gray fox, bobcats, black bear, grizzly bears were exterminated from California in 1920. Just so in case anyone knew, there are no grizzlies in California.
There are no grizzlies. I had to put that in there.
Yep. Bighorn sheep, mountain lions, gophers, California king snake, and striped racer snakes. So the snakes are not venomous, and I saw the notes. The gophers, what you want to look out for is sprained ankles.
Yeah, you that is something to, especially if you decide to go off trail. They make lots of holes.
Yeah.
I've done it before.
It's no good.
No.
The threat here for forest fires is starting an illegal fire when fire restrictions are in place. I am sure if you're from California or watch the news at all, any year in the last 10 years, California wildfires can be a problem.
And they take it serious. This wasn't in California, but we were in the Grand Tetons. I probably told the story before. I'll tell it real quick. But we were waking up one morning at one of our backcountry sites, and we were kind of just like getting up for the morning, and several park rangers with shovels were sprinting down the trail, like past us. Yeah. And we asked one of the guys in like the back of the line, like, hey, what's going on? And he said, we got reports of someone starting illegal fires like a couple miles that way. So they were like running to go get him. And we were making the joke, like, what are the shovels for? To like put the fire out, or like,
yeah, dig fire trenches and maybe bop the dude.
Yeah. So
if necessary. But like, think about how many people die and how many billions in damage those fires can cause.
Yeah, and I mean it can take out half a park. We've been in parks where there've been fires and it just looks like a moonscape.
Yeah.
So yeah, they take
if it happens naturally, fine, because that happens.
You can't
lightning
prevent
strike.
that.
Yeah, but if there's people just causing it, that's a problem.
Yeah. So take that very serious if you're in one of these parks and they have fire restrictions.
Yeah.
Follow their rules, because it's bigger than you. You could end up destroying half the park.
Yeah, it's not to ruin your time. That's for sure. So there's tree hazards. You want to keep your eyes and ears open to run if you hear cracks or snapping from tree roots, trunks, or branches. Sometimes there is no sound. Don't linger under dead, cracked, broken, or hanging branches, or under trees that are rotted at the base or have a cracked bark or peeling. They are called widow makers for a reason. If you get smashed while you're in your tent, a lot of times you will not make it. Trees are extremely heavy, even if they seem small. Driving on mountain roads.
Was that your car?
I think it wasn't originally, and then I think I added to it.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, there's like alarms going off. I'm very interested to hear this afterwards, how much you can pick up on like a car alarm.
Sorry, I feel like we're like zoo animals almost. If we'll put the video up so you can see the video, it won't be the final position of the cameras, but people are just kind of walking by, like staring in, like confused.
Yeah, we're on the corner, so we have two windows. We're on a major intersection. It's kind of cool, but we're gonna have to get used to it.
Yeah, it's a little strange.
Yeah. So another thing, I'm not gonna read all this, but I'll just go through it. So when you're driving in mountain roads, a big thing that people have issues with, and we haven't talked about this before, but when you're driving, when you're going downhill or extreme elevations, you don't want to like sit on your brakes. You want to downshift. There's a lot of buttons in your car. If you've ever seen a button with like the car going down-ish, you want to turn that on, because what it's going to do is use your engine RPMs to slow you down.
Yeah.
Because if you overheat your brakes, the worst thing that can happen is your brakes will completely give out and then you have no brakes. That's a big problem for semi-drivers. If you've ever seen those sand ramps that go off to the right, that's for runaway trucks that have overheated their brakes and they've lost it. But it can mess up your car as a person. You can warp your
they can catch fire if you really ride them.
Yeah, so you want to be careful when you're going down those. Use turnouts if you feel like something's going on with the car. Let it take some breaks, things like that.
Yeah.
And then just be really careful for rocks and wildlife. So you don't want to go careening off a cliff.
It does take a little getting used to driving in, high elevations, because the roads are usually very narrow. It's almost like switchbacks for cars.
Yeah.
And it can be, some of the sides of the road could be like 1,000-foot drop.
Yeah, you do not want to discover.
It
if
is
your car
a
can handle the fall.
little freaky the first time you do it, but just do it at night, and then you don't know what's out there.
Yeah. Just some of the other dangers: poison oak, rattlesnakes, the hot weather, drinking or contaminated water. I was going to say like unfiltered water.
Yeah.
Hiking at high altitude, lightning, hypothermia, all the things we've talked about in other shows you got to watch out for in this park. So let's talk about Randy.
So like we said in the beginning, his name was Randy Morgenson. He was a National Park Service backcountry ranger in the Kings Canyon National Park area. Date he was last known location was July 21st of 1996. Gender, male. He was age 51. This is from the official NPS documents, but I saw a lot of news sources list his age as 54. But based on what the NPS published, he was 51. He was 5'8". He was 150.
Sounds like those news sources didn't do their research.
Yeah, it didn't take long for me to find his age.
Yep.
So his height was 5'8". Weight was 150 pounds. He had longish black hair. That's directly from his missing flyer. Brown eyes, and he had a black and gray full beard, and he was very tan. And the clothing that they believe he was last seen in was his Park Service uniform. So, personality, I just picture coming across a guy like this on my hikes, a 28-year grizzled veteran of the backcountry.
Officer Peach.
Yeah. He's kind of like one of those, like, he's going to take no crap from anybody, but probably pretty nice and very knowledgeable, but like, don't like have him catch you littering.
Yeah.
You'll probably never make it out of there.
Yeah.
Especially Randy. So Randy hated garbage discarded by visitors in the park. He dubbed them backpacker detritus. He would haul out gunny sacks full of it out of the backcountry on regular occasions while checking out different areas in the backcountry.
And you know what stinks? In his time, it was way more acceptable.
Yeah.
I don't know if we talked about this in the show, but I was joking about it the other day I remember being a kid and driving on the freeway, like people just threw garbage out the window. Do you remember doing that?
I never did it because, my family always like, were, against just throwing your trash out the window.
You lived in a nice area too. I lived downtown Milwaukee. It wasn't illegal. And like, it was like, a street. And I remember even like with friends' parents and my parents, like they wouldn't do it now, but it's like people like, oh yeah, the street sweepers clean it up.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a thing that
I just remember the scene from the TV show Mad Men. They go on a picnic during lunch one day, and like this real nice picnic in this nice park, all their stuff is laid out on a blanket. And when they get done, Don Draper, the guy, the lead character in the show, just basically takes the blanket and like shakes it. Yeah. All the garbage just goes into the park and they leave. And I
think that was normal.
This was the 60s. I mean, I'm sure it was maybe dramatized a little bit, but I think it was.
No, it was totally, the whole idea was like, well, back then they had prisoners, they would have chain gangs cleaning the side of the freeway. So it was like, oh yeah, they have people that clean this up. So we just do this. It wasn't like, screw you. It was like, oh, you're done with your Happy Meal? Throw the whole bag out the window.
I think also there were a lot less people back in like the 60s and 70s population wise. So
it wasn't as bad.
Yeah. People throwing garbage out, maybe what didn't become such a problem until more people here, but I don't know.
Yeah.
But
we don't have to stand. I thought it was funny.
No. So Randy, he was quoted from people because he was so sick of it. He called him Swinus americanus, the species of backpacking tourist whose litter he had to pick up and whose foul temper he could be the bane of his existence. But he also, a lot of the reports and stories I read, he was also a really nice guy, very knowledgeable. So he wrote in his 1973 McClure Meadow log, all of your life, someone is pointing the way, directing you this way and that, determining for you which road is best traveled. Here is your chance to be adventuresome. Don't forever seek the easiest way. Take the way you find. Don't demand trail signs and sturdy bridges. Don't demand we show you the mountains. Seek them and find them yourself. This is your birthright as an animal most commonly denied you. Be free enough from intentions to find goodness wherever you are in whatever is happening. Here for once in your life, you can now live by whim. Here's your one chance to get lost, fall in a creek, find a beautiful place.
I like that.
Yeah. And he just wrote that in a trail log.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's super deep.
I mean, so over the decades of his work, Morgenson had built a solid reputation in the park as a friendly backcountry ranger who could hold forth on the geologic origins of the cliffs above him, as well as on the scientific names of the animals around him. So, like I said, he was a seasonal ranger for the National Park Service, which meant he had to reapply for his job every season with no medical benefits or retirement plan. So out of the 14 backcountry rangers at the time in this park, more than half of them who reported for duty in 1996 had been coming back every summer for more than a decade. Many of them have been there for 2 decades. They certainly weren't in it for the money. It is often said that rangers like Randy were paid in sunsets. In the event of his death in service, their families were eligible for a one-time $100,000 payment, but no pension. For the past few years, though, his perch had been a small, steel-framed and canvas-topped cabin 2 miles east of Bench Lake. A photographer by profession, Morgenson is one of 16 high country rangers who worked from July through October. This guy had an incredible early life, too. He'd grown up in Yosemite National Park, where he had assisted Ansel Adams in lugging around the famous photographer's heavy, large-format tripod. He joined the Peace Corps and had been stationed in India, where he learned high-altitude mountaineering and expedition planning from Sherpas. He had also been a winter ranger in Yosemite's Tulameen Meadows, a Nordic ranger out of Badger Pass. So people said that he was one of the most experienced rangers in the National Park Service at that time. There was really no one else that was more experienced than him. Joe's got pictures of him up on the screen.
Yeah, if you want to see him, go watch our video.
Yeah, so like I said, he had been in Park Service for 28 years. For nearly 3 decades, when someone went missing in Sequoia or Kings Canyon National Park, standard operating procedure had included at least a radio call to Randy, the park's most dependable source of high country knowledge. Randy, these are stories from some of the people that worked with him. Randy was so in sync with the mountains, says Alden Nash, a retired sub-district ranger and Randy's former supervisor, that he could look at a missing person's last known whereabouts on a topographic map, consider the terrain and how it pulls at a person, and make a judgment call with astounding results.
Oh, wow. So he would just like estimate how someone would attack
Yeah.
a different elevation based on their experience.
Yeah, so they actually had a story of this. One time a Boy Scout was hiking and got separated from his... sorry, I'm adjusting something. So one time a Boy Scout was hiking in the park and got separated from his troop, and he couldn't be found before nightfall. Randy looked at a map for a few minutes, traced his thumb over a few lines, and then tapped his finger on a meadow. He said, "Go land a helicopter in the meadow tomorrow morning." So and then goes, "That's where he'll be." So sure enough.
And he was right. Dude,
sure enough.
That's so awesome.
The next morning, they took a helicopter out there. The scout came running out of the woods after the helicopter landed in the meadow. He'd taken a wrong turn at a confusing trail intersection and hadn't realized his mistake until it was almost dark and too late to retrace his footsteps. The scout was scared after a night alone, but was fine. So that's how well he knew the area. So
that's crazy.
This might be the most experienced person we've ever covered that's gone missing in an area. I don't think we could find someone that knows the area that they went missing in better than this guy. So moving on to the timeline. So we're going to go back to the start of the 1996 season. So Randy's life, was ups and downs. He had a lot of, amazing experiences, but he also, had some turmoil in his personal life. So Randy had seemed depressed to his colleagues, saying, after all these years of being a ranger, I wonder if it's been worth it. Randy had recently received divorce papers from his wife, Judy. For many years, she had joined him in the backcountry, but in recent years, she had decided not to accompany him. And then Randy had recently had an affair with a fellow ranger, Lo Linus, and this was obviously...
You're just gonna put him on blast on our podcast?
Well, it's part of the story.
I'm just kidding. I'm just giving you crap.
Yeah, so too soon?
Yeah.
I didn't have the affair with... he did that, so...
You know why it's doing that? Because you broke it.
I broke it.
Yeah, you bent the whole thing down.
I did do that.
Yep. So that you're just gonna have to deal with it.
All right. I wondered why.
Mike's microphone keeps slowly dropping, and he keeps pulling it back up, all frustrated while trying
really
to keep.
Annoying.
You're doing a great job though of like keeping your composure during all of it. So good job. You keep talking. I'm gonna try and fix it. Okay. I'm gonna listen in the background while I'm doing it.
All right. So yeah, Randy had recently had an affair with this fellow ranger, and the divorce was the consequence. He had told close friends and a fellow ranger that at times he felt suicidal. So let's fast forward now to.
Just keep going.
All right.
Ready?
Sorry.
There, that's gonna hold it.
No. We may have to cut this.
No, leave it in. Always leave it in. There we go. Hold on.
New studio with growing pains.
Same. Worse? Better?
I don't know. Well, it'll work.
We'll figure it out. All right. It's part of the record now.
Yeah. So, all right. Sorry about all that. I'm still futzing with it. We'll cut that out. Okay. I promise I'm done messing around with my microphone. So, all right. We're fast forwarding to July 20th of 1996. Randy had radioed the same colleagues and his wife to ask some mundane questions that they interpreted as Randy just wanting somebody to talk to. The short conversation had ended when Randy said abruptly, "I won't be bothering you two anymore." So back then, I don't know if it's the same as it is now, but twice a day, High Country Rangers had to check in by radio with headquarters. So on July 20th, Morgenson called in and reported nothing unusual. For the next 2 days, he failed to check in, and supervisor chalked it up to his practice of exploring the upper reaches of the high country, too high for radio contact. So nothing out of the ordinary for Randy. And like we said, he's so experienced. No one ever doubted that he would go missing. So July 21st, 1996, Randy had left a note on his tent. The date that he had written was June 21st, even though it was July, to say he would be away for 2 or 3 days. Then Randy departed his station near Bench Lake, leaving his Smith & Wesson 357 Magnum behind, which was locked in a drawer in his cabin. 2 hikers actually encountered Randy somewhere along the John Muir Trail the day of his disappearance. They said he seemed to be in good spirits and encouraged them to continue their trek over the next daunting pass. This would be the last time anyone would ever see Randy alive. So, like we said, he went missing July 21st of 1996. So fast forward to July 23rd of 1996. This is kind of when a cursory search for Randy started. So 3 days later, with still no word from Morgenson, the Park Service initiated a small search of the area. Ranger Rick Sanger was just a second-year backcountry ranger when Randy failed to check in by radio for several days. Rick hiked through the night to Morgenson's station at Bench Lake and discovered the note confirming he was overdue from a cross-country patrol. So now that they knew he was supposed to be back by the 24th, when he didn't return on the 24th, a very extensive search was launched. So July 25th, 1996 was when he was officially reported missing. And many said Randy was always known to have a low impact on the environment, but there was a lot of heavy rain around this time, so they couldn't pick up any tracks, and so they really had no clue of where he was going. So the news spurred one of the most intense and emotionally draining search and rescue operations in NPS history, in large part because the Rangers were searching for one of their own. And at the time, National Park officials actually said this was the only other disappearance of a ranger other than Paul Fugate, which we covered in our very first episode, which was from the 1970s, and he was not found as well. So Randy Kaufman, the incident commander, had instructed rangers searching for Randy to read Morgenson's logbook to gather any hints of where he had gone. He also conducted, now I've never heard of this before, so they conducted a secret ballot among them to assign each segment of the search area a POA, a probability of area, and then an ROW, rest of world probability, if Randy was somewhere outside of the designated search area. The percentage points assigned by each ranger for the 16 segments plus the row segment had to add up to 100 points, and nobody could assign 0 for an area. The Bench Lake Basin area was the highest percentage POA at 26.2%, while the Marion Lake and its surrounding area were second highest at 19.2%. The row option was voted as the lowest POA by everybody except Ranger George Durkee, a close friend who assigned that choice a high percentage knowing Randy's depressive thoughts at the time. Each segment was between 500 and 7,000 acres, making the operation difficult and hazardous to the rescuers. Nearly 100 rescue personnel searched 80 square miles of wilderness.
Jeez.
So talk about...
So did they do that ballot and it was secretive so they could have like overlapping? Like, so they wouldn't have the same person checking the same area twice?
Yeah, I really don't know. Maybe it's so people aren't influenced by other people. Like, so this is what each person thinks, and maybe they figure they get more accurate idea of where to search. I don't know. I've never heard of that method.
Yeah, I've never heard of it either before. I want to know if it like has proven to be better or if it's, just doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, I don't know. So, a short time before his disappearance, Randy's radio had stopped working, which forced him to hike to another station to pick up a replacement. Now, they had hoped that this was all just because of a dead radio, so they were still holding out hope that maybe it was just a malfunction of his radio. Mm-hmm. So a special investigator employed by the Park Service found out that Randy had been threatened with violence on 2 separate recent occasions, but both of those individuals had alibis, so they're actually looking into foul play as well. Some even speculated that he had just left the park to start a new life, but Randy's car was found where he had parked it, and like in almost all cases, bank records show no withdrawals and his credit cards were unused. A computer program called Cassie, there you go, Joe, which stands for Computer Aided Search Information Exchange. It sounds something very 90s.
Yes. Very literal.
Yeah. So was used and designed to simplify most of the calculations involved in managing a search emergency. A computer printout provides basic information about how each segment has been searched, air, foot, dog, horse, and how effective the searchers believe they were in clearing that area. Another tool that I've never heard of before. I'm sure they're using tools now. Like,
maybe they use stuff like this and it's never brought up. I wonder why in this particular one they're like, here's all the tools we use.
Yeah, it's not like you want to keep it secret. Like I don't know why you would not mention that, but maybe it's just so commonplace now that people just assume like, oh yeah, you're using modern technology to help search. Like,
maybe that's like how we talk about FLIR now because that's new. Maybe that's like what that was then. And
they used FLIR in this search as well, so it's been around a while. So
then I don't know. I've never heard of this. Maybe it doesn't work and they stopped using it. And that's why they don't talk about it.
So they said using this method, the leader of the search can cross off search segments once they have been cleared, or maybe it's something that everyone has on their phone now. Yeah, like it's an app you can download. Search and rescue app.
Yeah, maybe.
I should probably have looked into this more, but it sounds kind of interesting. But
so that's what I'm here for.
However, the system presumes the missing person is not on the move and has not re-entered the area already cleared. In addition, segment searches are generally limited to surface areas, meaning they don't factor in locations underwater, underground, or under rock slides. So, over the following days, there was a lot of frustration as dogs followed scents that seemed to abruptly stop, and random pieces of gear were found in several different locations, but none of it could be positively linked to Randy. A FLIR helicopter equipped with infrared camera picked up a campfire burning on a hillside, but with no one in sight tending it. Eventually, the search was called off with no sign of Randy or a body. Then something kind of strange happens. After all this, a letter arrived at Randy and Judy Morgenson's home in Sedona, Arizona, from Randy. Judy opened the letter and noted it had been postmarked 2 days after his apparent disappearance. Since there's no postal service in the national park, she couldn't understand how Randy could have mailed this letter. That added to the suspicions that he had left the area to start a new life away from the NPS. So, very, odd. It doesn't mean he didn't somehow get the letter out and then disappeared. It could have just taken that long for the letter to, process out of the area.
Sure.
Who knows?
Yeah.
So let's move into the future now, early August of 1996. So 13 days after Randy had been reported missing, the official search, which included helicopters, dog teams, and dozens of volunteers, was called off. Not a single trace of Randy had been found, not even a footprint. So a massive search. I think you had a motivation for the searchers to really try on this one because they were looking for one of their own.
Yeah.
Obviously they try in every search. It's not like they take a search off, but this one they had special motivation to, find him and didn't even find a footprint. Not a single anything.
He took leave no trace very seriously.
Yes.
So I'm not saying it to be funny. It's a little bit of a joke, but with how much he hated garbage and stuff, even with him being lost, he was probably very careful about not leaving a trace, where it's like the one time it's like, hey, maybe tie something to a tree or something but.
Yeah. So, he, for everyone pretty much thought this was going to be one of those cases that was never solved. Didn't find anything, but July 15th of 2001, nearly 5 years after the search was called off for Randy, a 19-year-old member of the California Conservation Corps trail building crew ventured off trail and found some remains. The worker found some new evidence near a creek in a gorge in the Window Peak drainage, very near the outermost border of the search area, below the pools of a waterfall. Rangers were called in and soon discovered a tattered shirt with Morgenson's badge, then a backpack with a buckle fastened and a boot. On close examination of the boot, which was half submerged in the water, it had something white protruding from it, a leg bone. The boot and the pack seemed to match the description of the gear that Randy reportedly had been using. Investigation and recovery teams were flown in shortly after. A functioning park issue radio was discovered resting on top of the falls, not at the bottom like the other evidence. It was turned to the on position. The discovery confused matters even more. Although these remains seem to confirm Randy had been in the mountains the whole time, investigators weren't certain whether this is where Randy had died. Rangers had remembered searching the area and crossing at the exact spot where the radio was found. So is that a case of them misremembering the search? Or did he come back after the search, 13 days later and place that radio there? Or was it foul play and someone killed him, dumped his body there, and then put the radio? So we'll get into theories. So, retired Sierra Sub-District Ranger Alden Nash believes Morgenson had fallen through a snow bridge and broken his leg, and his body had simply been hidden beneath the ice throughout the search. Weirdly, during the rescue attempt in 1996, Judy had dreamed of a dead man floating in the lake. She went on to... a guy who wrote a book on this. So I forgot to mention when we started this. This case has been actually covered quite a bit. There's several books on it. So there's a lot more detail to the case that we couldn't really get into because of time constraints of the podcast. But I recommend going out there and potentially, getting one of these books and reading about it. It's a very fascinating case. But this guy, Eric Blem, was quoted, "I don't think it was an accident." He's the author of the last season, a book about the disappearance of Randy Morgenson. Blem says Randy may have wanted to appear to have died on the job to make sure Judy, his wife at the time, got her $100,000 benefit from the government, a policy not honored in the case of suicide. He goes on to quote, "If he wanted to throw off the dogs or sucker people into believing something happened, he did a great job." Blem says, "After so many years with the bones gnawed, there's no way to say exactly what happened." So somewhat a closure because they found his remains. And then something actually kind of cool has happened in the time since. So there's kind of an unofficial, they unofficially are honoring Randy. So the unofficial Mount Morgenson in the memory of Randy is the first peak west of Mount Russell, half a mile just north of Mount Whitney. Morgenson is also distinguished from the west peak of Mount Russell. And a summit register with the name Mount Randy Morgenson at 13,920 feet was taken to the top by two park veterans in 2007. A peak bagger named Richard Petrovsky found the original register missing when he climbed Mount Morgenson on September 20th of 2008. So he ended up placing a temporary one there that day and made a huge effort to return to the summit 1 week later with a weatherproof ammo can and a replacement journal that barely a handful of people, if any, sign each year. So before these registers, the peak was referenced only by its height on USGS maps, peak 4245. So very interesting case. This is, I'm sure other park rangers have died in the parks, but this was, I don't remember hearing about a park ranger since 1996 to have gone missing. Mm-hmm. I guess I haven't. So this may still stand as one of two park rangers who've ever gone missing in the park, and a lot of questions remain on this. He did have some encounters with hikers that were physical in nature that they actually mentioned in the search. He was going through a nasty divorce with his wife. A friend of his said he appeared kind of suicidal at times. So, and then, investigators said they think he fell through a snow bridge. So there's a lot going on. What do you think happened, Joe?
Well, first of all, we are now the proud owners of Cassie 3.
Oh, really?
It's free.
Really?
Yeah, look at this. You can do all the calculations for search and rescue.
Wow.
So it's made to run on Windows XP though.
Okay.
So I don't think it's been updated for about 15 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so I thought that was funny. I'm gonna play with that actually and find out how it works. So what do I think happened? The radio thing is weird because it was such a long time, and it was like for something to be standing upright like that.
Yeah.
For 5 years, because they said it was upright, right, at the top of the falls.
Yes.
So nothing knocked it over.
Right.
I'm thinking about like when I have a walkie-talkie, I place like in my backyard.
Yeah.
Odds are it's not going to be upright by the end of the day.
And I mean, this is probably bigger than your standard like one you
No,
buy.
I'm thinking of like a official NPS one with a very big black base, not like a little tiny like Motorola one or something like that. But even then, it's on a rock. It's not like on a flat surface, and it's in the wilderness.
Yeah.
Like rain, wind, animals, like stuff. Like a mouse going to investigate it might knock it over if it jumped on it.
Yeah.
Like how is it upright 5 years later?
Well, now I don't know that it was upright. I think it was in the on position.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because he would have it on, and why would he turn it off?
Yeah. So,
Unless that's a thing I could be wrong. Maybe it's a thing they do to conserve battery.
so they didn't say the radio was like standing upright. They just said it was discovered at the top of the falls on.
Oh, okay. I thought you mentioned
No.
that it was upright. Okay. So I just spent a lot of brain power thinking about that. Maybe it's not even true. So see, so they thought the fact that it was on was odd.
Let me just read through it again. Investigation and recovery teams were flown in shortly after a functioning park issue radio was discovered resting on top of the falls, not at the bottom like the other evidence. It was turned to the on position. They said the discovery confused matters even more. So yeah, maybe I misspoke, but
Okay.
So they were just confused by the fact that all the rest of his gear was down at the bottom of the falls, and the radio was the one thing that was on the top, and it was still on.
Well, here's a hypothesis. What if he is lost?
Yeah.
He's in this gorge, right, where there's no radio. So is he on top of the falls to try and get signal? And he's literally trying to key up the microphone.
Yeah.
And does he slip and fall, and he drops that as he falls?
Through an ice bridge, like they said.
Yeah, or he's just on the edge of the rock or something like that without seeing too many, like there wasn't photos of the area, but if there's no foul play, to me he's on top of something to get a signal. And he's trying to reach somebody. So he's keying the mic. Maybe he slips and drops as he's falling. If he's holding the thing, his arms flail because he's falling. Do you throw it up in the air and he went to the bottom, died.
Yeah.
And then that's where his remains are, and then the walkie's up top.
Yeah, the one thing I struggle with is him getting lost out there. I feel like I'm leaning more towards kind of what that author of that book said was he was suicidal, but he staged it as an accident so his wife could get that benefit.
Well, that would be the accident I would come up with. He was keying up his mic at the edge of a waterfall.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too bad.
Because he seems too
good.
Too intelligent in that area to make the mistake of walking out on an ice bridge, Like, I feel like he would know that.
There's also the incident you get into. I'm going to make sure I'm sharing. I am. The incident you can get into where you can be complacent when you're that good at something.
True.
So if it looked like just something like, I've done that a million times. Just like, so he's being quote unquote careful, but almost a little careless in his abilities. That's always a possibility. So I could see it either way. I could see it being a legit accident. I could also see it being, like you said, if he was suicidal, it looks like an accident.
Yeah.
Maybe it's too perfect. Like he overthought how an accident would look.
And then actually fell.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying like maybe normally the walkie, like you wouldn't throw your walkie. Like you're not thinking clearly. If he's depressed and he's just trying to do something right by his wife. Well,
Yeah.
the right thing would be to not do that and work it out. But he's potentially overthinking because an accident is something that happens that there is no thought going into. Otherwise, it wouldn't be an accident.
Yeah.
So to plan it out, usually it's going to look a little weird. So maybe that is the case because for whatever reason, the guys who are seasoned at this looked at what they found and said something's off.
Yeah.
I do like giving credence to people's guts that know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So if they felt that way, maybe it wasn't exactly what they said, but it's kind of like when you walk into an area and you know everything about maybe your bedroom, right?
Yeah.
If something was moved a little bit that's always been there, you might not know what changed, but you'd walk and be like, something's different
Something's
in here.
off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if they felt that, they're seeing things or that they might even be able to put in words, but they know it's not normal.
Yeah. And I mean, isolation, even the most, the people that love being alone, if you're isolated long enough, it can mess with you.
Yeah, we're social beings.
And if, he's going through a tough divorce, this is something that has not happened over the other 7 years of his service out in the backcountry, there's a chance that it kind of messed with his head. And, I don't think we'll ever know if it was suicide or not, but I'm definitely on the same train as the investigators thinking that he fell through an ice bridge.
Yeah.
And it broke his leg and was stuck down there and ended up dying.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting that they made the point to say that they did search this area and didn't see the walkie-talkie.
See, yeah, that's
could have been covered up in snow.
Did they? I was gonna say, did they talk about the conditions during the search?
No,
I don't
not
recall
really.
you mentioning it.
Just that it rained a lot and they couldn't get tracks.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think unfortunately, we won't, like we said, we won't know if it was suicide or not, but he obviously fell. I don't think it was foul play. It seems too remote of an area.
Yeah, whatever happened, it seems like he fell.
Yeah.
And either passed from injuries directly or passed shortly after due to the extent of his injuries.
Yeah.
So
yeah, at least they got closure and eventually found the remains.
It's a really sad case, especially for a guy that seemed to love the outdoors. There was a quote when I was searching for him that popped up a lot because the guy Eric Blem wrote a book called The Last Season.
Yeah, that's the guy I was quoting.
Okay, he had another quote in there, and it made it seem like I didn't do too much research, but it made it seem like it was actually a quote from Randy.
Okay,
and it says, "The least I owe these mountains is a body."
Huh.
And he said that was him quoting it, and that's from his book.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
That leads me to if he's suicidal, and that's kind of in his head, like he's so in attuned to nature and feeling one with the wilderness. That's like his coup de grace. This is how I'm going to go out.
Yeah.
I'm going to pay back my being to the mountains.
Yeah.
It's an unfortunate way to do it if that's truly the case, but it's just.
I mean, it might.
It's a good quote when you're not talking about being suicidal. It's a good quote to I know how I feel about that quote when I read it. I was like, I feel the same way. When I go to the immense beauty of it, it's like, what can I do to repay Earth for what I've done? Now, for me, it's I clean the trails. I pull, if I see garbage, I pick it up.
Yeah.
I usually am walking out, not with the amount of garbage he has, but I usually, if it's a success, I didn't find any garbage, but otherwise I always try and leave with more than what I brought in.
Yeah.
In that regard. So that's how I repay back. But
yeah, no, I think it's a sad case because he seemed like a really cool guy. Like any hiker would want to come across him and pick his brain about.
Yeah. And he is just a caricature of what a ranger would look like.
And he got to hang out with Ansel Adams as a kid.
Yeah. I'm sure so that's people like that. It's fun to sit around a campfire and just hear their stories from their life because for them, it's normal.
Can you imagine the stories this guy had from 28 years of working in the backcountry?
Yeah. And just being around interesting people but that was just his life.
That was just his life. Yeah.
So,
well,
yep. Well, thanks again for tuning into our show. We appreciate you all for listening and sharing locations unknown with your friends and family. Be sure to like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, where you can find all the videos of what we talked about and you want to see what this guy looks like. Also, if you'd like to support the show monetarily, please visit our website or Facebook store to buy some cool swag. Additionally, you can subscribe to our Patreon account on YouTube and some of the Apple subscription. Have we even gotten any on the Apple subscribers?
A ton.
Yeah. Okay. I think I
think something's wrong with it. I don't know if you can find it.
Maybe. I mean, we had, what'd you say? We had 60,000 downloads last month?
Yeah.
That's crazy. The last time we celebrated was 40,000. That's 20,000 more downloads last month. So word's getting out. So thank you all. Keep spreading the word. Make our show bigger and bigger and bigger. We'll add different things, have events, things like that as we get larger. Maybe go full time, which means more content. So spread the word to get more of these. And lastly, when enjoying the beauty of nature, whether backpacking, camping, or simply taking a walk, always remember to leave no trace. Thanks, and we will see you all next time.